The entire team at the Emsolation podcast acknowledges the traditional custodians and cultures of the lands and seas on which we live and work. We pay our respects to all First Nations peoples, elders and ancestors. We acknowledge that sovereignty was never ceded and stand in solidarity towards a shared future. I personally want to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which I record this podcast every week, the Wurundjeri people. I recognise their continued connection to the land and waters of this beautiful place I call home. Always was, always will be.
This is Free Time Tuesday on Emsolation with M. Rusciano.
Well, hello there and welcome to Free Time Tuesday. Da, 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 da. Should I do a separate theme song? Do we feel like, I'm always a fan of a new theme song. You know that. But I just feel like, I don't know, what would a branding expert say? Do we keep it under the Emsolation umbrella? I don't know. Either way, here we are. Free Time Tuesday. Thank you for joining me. My name is M. Rusciano. I am a writer, a singer, a stand-up comedian, a maximalist power queen, a neurodivergent magic brain, and a storyteller. Thursdays, I'm usually here with my best friend since I was 11, screenwriter Mr. Michael Lucas, and my daughter Marcella appears to have become an integral part of the on-air team. I don't know how that happened, but I think it was always destined to. Today, though, look, Tuesdays have been reserved for me to have a conversation with you all about the things that have been stuck in my crawl, on my brain, on my mind. You know, when you get in the shower and the things that you mull over in there. And the big thing for me, and look, this is going to surprise absolutely none of you, has been the passing of the Queen, Queen Elizabeth II. And initially, I wasn't even going to do a podcast today because when I'm overthinking something or thinking a lot about a specific topic, I do have this urge to then kind of purge it, especially when there's a microphone in front of me or if I'm on stage. That's how I process stuff. But in this instance, I just didn't want to say the wrong thing. I didn't want to upset any more people because as we are seeing this unfold, there has been an extremely complex, hard, big reaction on both ends of the spectrum to her passing. And that's what I wanted to discuss today. Now, the royal family has been something that I've always joked about and, made, not admired, but there's Fergie, there's the characters, and I'm always drawn to complex, ridiculous, extreme things. That's the dopamine. I just, the big larger than life stuff, I'm a moth to the flame. And obviously the royal family are all of those things. And I think I'm very guilty of not going deep enough into exactly what they represent. And look, until I knew better, the Queen to me had always been, like a dignified, stoic leader who loved her family and her country. And, I grew up seeing the hair and the handbags and the gloves. And my Nana Denise, who was the person I was closest to in the whole world in my family, was a staunch monarchist. She had her hair done the same way that Liz got her hair done. And she left me her Charles and Di commemorative plate in her will. It was her prized possession. She made a pilgrimage to England and stood proudly at the front of Buckingham Palace. She'd come all the way from Berrigan, New South Wales, and a photo was taken there, the biggest grin you've ever seen on my grandmother's face, and she was wearing a mahogany beret, a mahogany top with a mahogany jacket and mahogany gloves, because she knew that the colour, because maybe at some point Elizabeth would look out the window and think, my God, that is a stylish woman, I'll invite her in for tea. I'm pretty sure that's what Denise was thinking. So that had always been my association with the Queen. And in a sense, I now know that association is a form of non-Indigenous privilege, of white privilege. So when I awoke to the news of her death, my initial reaction was a pang of sadness for my grandmother. And then I, as my brain does, thought about if Harry and Meghan would make the trip over and was Camilla finally, like she'd played the long game and here she was, Queen Consort. And then I kind of made my way through all the kids and then suddenly I started feeling sick because I do know better now. And I know that her legacy isn't just one of epic stoicism and record-breaking service to country, that she wasn't just a harmless nana who loved a brooch. Her legacy was also undeniably intertwined with colonialism, enforced slavery, genocide, theft, and the dispossession of Indigenous peoples of their lands. And I think the Queen's death and the various complex reactions to it shows us that the history of the monarchy needs to be thoroughly examined and discussed. It's time, and this is throwing open the doors. This is shining the very harsh light that needs to be shone on how the Crown used their powers to oppress marginalised communities. And, you know, when I was at school, and a lot of you are the same age as me, we went to primary school in the mid-80s, high school in the 90s, they didn't teach you that. That was not what the monarchy represented. We were told that they were, you know, this glamorous, long-standing family, blue bloods, to look up to and revere and wave little flags at. And I don't even think about the fact that for the Indigenous kids that I went to school with, and there were a couple, and certainly the Indigenous kids that I ran with at athletics, I never thought about what they represented to them at the time. I also don't think that anyone is specifically saying you're a bad person if you feel sad about her death. I think the point is not to think or believe that your sadness is more important or legitimate than the feelings of those who don't mourn her, but instead mourn what her institution did to them and their ancestors. You know, and there have been so many examples that I have seen of people policing other people's grief on both sides of the fences. But for me, seeing white Australians demand that Indigenous Australians mourn and be sad about the passing of a person who represented a system that irrevocably changed and ruined countless numbers of their lives, who oppressed them, who stole their lands, is beyond the pale. You do not have the right to do that. And what you also have to remember, that this isn't thousands of people standing yelling at the frail, lifeless body of the Queen. They're raging at the system that she was the figurehead of. Today I read a piece from writer and Yulalai Yinarr woman Natasha Lucas, and in it she wrote, "Our ties to the monarchy and colonialism will always be deeply rooted in this country's history. The sovereignty of Aboriginal people and the Crown cannot coexist. The Queen is unfortunately collateral damage on an issue that goes all the way back to 1877. Do not police my feelings on something I was born to oppose." In other pieces I've read, people have gone further. They felt that she had ample opportunity to apologise and compensate for what the British colonial empire did to the countries they colonised, and she chose not to. And that's the truth. I agree. The complex and hard truth of the matter, the truth about how and why this continent changed hands, is an ugly one. But again, this isn't something readily taught in schools, so most of us grew up conditioned to believe that the monarchy was a good thing, a big thing, a thing to be revered, and we were unaware of how they were actually just a regular and painful reminder to our First Nations peoples of what they'd lost. And this in itself is another form of white privilege, of non-Indigenous privilege. We have all benefited from the systems that oppressed our First Nations people. So when I say that this is a complex and nuanced and non-binary situation, it is, but it isn't for those who have directly been affected by the British colonial empire. And that's why you don't get to tell our First Nations peoples to be respectful, to be sad, to cry. Why should they? No one did for them. So I guess I ask you all to sit in however you're feeling. Keep reading, keep educating yourself, keep asking questions. But instead of asking Indigenous people to be respectful because you're feeling sad, you need to reverse that and be respectful of them and why they are feeling a certain type of way about the Queen's death. That's all I have for today. I know it's not exactly right or perfect, but I wanted to address it. I did put a post up and I did receive some messages. They were all, no one was attacking me or in any way, but I guess a lot of people were confused as to how we have the acknowledgement of country at the start of this podcast, and then I was commenting on the passing of the monarch that represents the system of oppression for the reason that we need that acknowledgement of country. And I understand why that would be confusing. I am confused by it. But like I said, I'm still untangling myself from the things I was conditioned to believe and the personal feelings tied up with someone I loved very dearly. And I think I'll get there, but I'm not there. But I'm not saying I'm right. And I'm probably wrong. I am wrong. In the eyes of many people, I was wrong to put up a picture of the Queen, and I accept that completely. And then I didn't know if I should take it down, but then I didn't know if that was... I didn't know. And I still don't. But I do know that Indigenous people of all the countries that they colonised have every right to be fucking angry. And we don't get to tell them otherwise. That is what I do know 100%. Thanks for being here, and we'll catch you on Thursday.
Free Time Tuesday on Emsolation is a Spotify exclusive podcast hosted and produced by Em Rusciano. Recorded and edited at Down the Hill Studios by Ezekiel Fenn. A brand new episode of Emsolation with Em Rusciano drops every Thursday, 6 a.m, only on Spotify.